Wanted. Young men to rebuild Western civilization. Must be unafraid of pain, blisters, intellectual rigor, and a lifetime of long shifts with swords and shovels, digging ditches, repelling invaders, and reading stacks of books taller than their fathers. Must be impervious to manipulative women of all sorts, giggling virgins, cyber skanks, and even full cauldrons of Karens or hand-wringing clergy, but always seeking to hear and heed the words of Lady Wisdom. Immune to the leadership of hypocrites and LARPing online masculinitods, unaffected by abusive authorities, petty professors, and all brokers of official respectability. Willing to hoist the Jolly Roger and Johnny Cash's favorite finger whenever faced with idolatry. Long-suffering joy and determination required. Must be willing to dwell among the tombs and graves of the long dead, seeking truths that cannot die. Exhaustion guaranteed. Conflict guaranteed. Mortality guaranteed. New St. Andrew's College. Liberal arts for the undaunted.
The American church really is gay.
Are you asking me out on a date?
Effeminate.
The Bible appears more to whisper when it comes to sexual sin.
Shallow.
I said, I want the African American 7.
And full of cowardly leaders.
Are we going to keep bickering over secondary issues?
America desperately needs to return to the Father. Either we fall on the rock and are broken, or we fall on the ground and are crushed under that rock. To fall on top of the rock and be broken is exactly the condition in which God brings reformation and revival. So which way is it, Prodigal America? Are you coming home to the Father? Join us this Reformation Day in Fort Worth, Texas, October 31st through November 2nd at Will Rogers Event Center, just days before our presidential election. And join with the thousands of us for the blessing of gathering together with God's people and celebrating God's goodness with beer and psalms. Hear from speakers such as Dr. James White, Pastor Toby Sumter, Pastor Doug Wilson, Dr. George Grant, Gaben Knox, Steve Dace, and more. Don't forget our Business Makers Conference, Jumpy Castles for the kiddos, after parties, single events, the Pastor's Luncheon, the Business Leaders Luncheon, and many more surprises coming. America has squandered her inheritance far too long. It's time she repents and returns home to her Father. Fight, Laugh, Feast presents Prodigal America.
Hello! Welcome back to Cross Politic with the Apologia Radio in the house.
Well, we have a full house.
Yeah. Yes.
My goodness.
I can't even keep track of everything that we got going on in this episode.
You got your tablet open, you got your laptop open, you got
I am lost. So
that's great.
Thank you for joining us. We need to wrap up our 100 days of Trump in office.
Is that possible?
And
not with Apologia in the room.
You said to make this just like we're on Apologia.
That's right. So
we still get another 20 minutes of goofing off.
That's right.
And then we get to the serious stuff.
No, I'm trying to. This is my job actually, is to get them to like be goofy for a minute, but then control them and herd them into like a discussion. That's my job. So
it's like Marcus.
He's a cowboy.
I can't do it with all these guys.
We have no one that does it at Apologia.
Trust me. It is not something that anybody can do.
That Apologia?
I don't think anybody's succeeded
Jeff just said we had no one.
Because Marcus
I don't even notice him trying.
After a while, you just give up. And you're just like, that's
great.
just how it is.
That's great. Okay, so let's pick up where where Seth left off with 100 days here. We're talking about gun control.
Right.
That he was going to, his first day in office, deregulate gun control on where gun-free zones are, and I think that was partly defined by there's gun-free zones in Army bases,
right?
So I think it included some Army bases,
some schools, colleges.
I don't know if it included schools in his original, but I know it included like basically areas that the president had direct control over, right? Because he's chief commander-in-chief, right? And so I think it included part of that. It also, Seth, what you had something to say about like the states, gun-free control with the states, or maybe give me the kind of breakdown of what it meant by gun-free or getting rid of the regulation on gun-free zones.
Yeah. So when it comes to guns and one of the things that Trump wanted to do, one of the things that he wanted to do was do reciprocation for the states. So you guys probably know that with driver's licenses, if you have a driver's license in Idaho, it works in every state.
Right.
That's one thing that Trump wants to do.
Yes.
With concealed carry permits, which I am actually not a fan of because I think it's unconstitutional.
I agree.
Why?
I agree.
I have one in my pocket.
A gun?
Oh.
No, I feel naked with
Marcus,
it.
Marcus knows where that's going.
I got to conceal
Why, Marcus?
carry.
Why is that a problem?
Because each state's law has to be independent, right?
Yeah, it's a 10th Amendment issue, basically. Like I'm full. I mean, I don't think states should even have concealed carry laws. I think you
preach it, boy, preach it. You're gonna get an organ in a second. Keep playing with me.
Yeah, I don't think the state really has any right to regulate guns at all.
Amen.
Come to Arizona.
Come to Arizona. We have constitutional carry.
That's like that's
So
like,
do we. We in Idaho, we have it now.
That's like when someone in the church says, "Hey, we should do this on Sunday mornings," and then somebody pulls out the confession, and you're like, "Oh, okay."
Because Marcus was pretty excited about
I was
Trump.
like, "Oh, that sounds like a great idea," and then you pull out the constitution. Oh, yeah,
that's right.
okay,
States'
well,
rights.
We have that thing.
Because remember, the federal government shall make no law regarding, right?
Guess no fancy license
Can
church
you give
service.
Seth back the mic?
All right, here you go.
Yeah, there we go.
So yeah, I mean that's actually a good point. What Gabe was saying is it says that Congress shall make no law. I mean that's a First Amendment thing, but yeah, when it comes to the 10th Amendment, basically anything that's not explicitly written out in the Constitution as a federal government power is left to the states, and that would include even things like the definition of marriage, which we're all Bible believers, so we know what the definition should be, but according to the Constitution, the states get to decide
what that is.
Yeah. And that actually brings up another issue, which is gay marriage isn't legal in America. Obergefell had nothing to do with the legality of marriage. It's something that
well, he's like a preacher, ain't he? He just get distracted.
You mean courts?
Yeah,
you mean courts?
I can kind of go anywhere.
You mean courts don't make laws?
We just went from the 10th Amendment.
Give me some more updates on Trump.
Oh, right, yes.
He's like, yeah, oh yeah, the president. That's right.
So yeah, when it comes to the gun issue, he wants to go to immigration.
Yeah, we got the gun thing.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the deal with guns. When it comes to immigration, everyone freaked out about his executive order, which supposedly was some kind of Muslim ban. Which
wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah. Actually, I don't think it would be.
Why y'all looking at me crazy?
I'm just
Everybody
listening.
just stopped and looked at me like.
No, I'm just listening.
You say that a lot, don't you? Why y'all looking at me like I'm crazy?
Yeah, because I must say a lot of crazy stuff. But I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
This is what it means to be in the studio with Chuck Knox, Luke.
You don't have a problem with the band?
It's easy to look at him crazy.
If the president, if you have a house, we're really going to go here. Mm-hmm. If you have a house and you don't want certain guests in your house because of the way they're going to treat the environment, then I would have them say, hey, I have no problem having you in here, but these are the requirements if you come in my house.
Yeah.
And so if the president doesn't have the ability to do that, then who else is going to protect us from those? I think if a president's job is to punish evildoers, I think Islam is probably one of the worst evils right now plaguing the world. And if he doesn't have the right to protect Americans from Islam itself, then I don't.
Yeah,
know what he's doing up there.
And one of the things, and if anyone who's listening wants to pursue this, Kenneth Gentry has a really good chapter on immigration in his book Political Christianity, where he goes into. I mean, again, our response always it can't be reactionary; it has to be principled. We have to look what the Bible actually says, and if you look at what the Bible actually says about borders, countries do seem to have a right to control their borders. Israel did in Nehemiah. There were times where they closed the gates of the city. Because
Marcus's hair is actually turning black now.
Yeah, y'all just keep on.
And to some extent, it's just an extension of Exodus 22, verse 2, where if a thief breaks in at night, you have the right to. Yeah. So
okay,
you have the right to exclude people under certain circumstances.
Sure. So okay, I'm with you. All right. So how much more we have for Trump?
Oh yeah, I keep getting distracted. So yeah, basically everyone freaked out about the executive order, but part of the problem was, I think a lot of people just didn't read the text of the executive order.
Sure.
I read through the whole thing. The only country that's specifically mentioned is Syria, and the executive order invokes. I don't think it was an executive order that Obama issued, but it was something that he issued where it did refer to other countries that were going to be banned, and a whole bunch of liberals reacted and said, "Oh, well, why are you banning these 7 countries? They have nothing to do with terrorism." Well, there actually is an article that I found on the Washington Examiner that says there are 72 individuals who, since 9/11, have been convicted of terrorism, and I'm trying to. My computer's not working very well, but
it never does when you're live.
Yeah, but many of them came from those 7 countries. So
okay, all right. So he's actually following through with his promises for the first 100 days. The question is he going to make is he going to make all of them? Is he going to actually fulfill his promises he gave us in the first 100 days of being in office?
Well, he's already broken some of them. I mean, one of the problems with going back to the gun-free zones issue is he can't just do anything with an executive order. He can't make laws.
Right.
Congress is the one that makes laws. So even if he had wanted to, he wouldn't simply have had the power to just get rid of all of them. He's not a tyrant.
Right.
So.
All right. Well, hey, we'll check back in with you. Next time we do a show, we're going to really want to know how many promises, how far is he in completing that? And Jeff just walked off from the microphone, is off getting something in his bag. This is happening at Apologia?
Every day.
Okay, every day? Oh, okay. All right, cool.
We are 100% professional.
Jeff will be hosting, and then he'll just walk
60%
off.
60% of the time, every time.
Like, hey, I'm hosting. You guys hold on a second.
Since he's transferring, we'll just go ahead and make the segue right into Pastor Luke Walker at Redeeming Cross Community Church in Richfield. Is doing a great ministry right now in writing biographies. This is your second book that we're on, but your first book was on Whitefield, right?
It was on John Wycliffe.
Yeah, something like that. I knew it was.
One of the W's.
It was a book.
One of our parishes.
Wycliffe? Like
Wycliffe.
Fuji's?
So,
no woman.
So, Pastor, why are you writing biographies right now? Like, out of all the things to be doing, don't you have something better to be doing with your time, like writing about the gospel?
Yes, sir. Well, besides debating on Facebook for hours a day, I have found time to devote studies
That's not funny.
to church history. So, yeah, what we're trying to do is, make church history accessible for folks. And so I have a passion for church history, been studying it for some years, and found an outlet with my friends at Wrath and Grace to put together short biographies to give people, to whet the appetites of folks for some of these great saints of old.
And why do we need to be reading these?
Good question. Because we don't live on an island. We don't live in a vacuum. And, there's a reason why things are like they are today. We stand on the shoulders of giants. And there's nothing more orienting than understanding the flow of church history, the flow of history in general, but particularly as a church, to see where we've come from, to see the baton that we hold and who we got it from, and who we're going to pass it to next,
Right. And so, go ahead.
Now, the book that we want to interview you on is kind of a biography, narrative of Olaudah Equiano.
Yes, sir.
And he was, as I was reading through this
he's
last
a G.
week, and he's a really interesting character. And he was spent most of his time in the British slave trade. He was actually a slave himself. Mostly,
yes,
for the most part, in the British slave trade. And then he kind of, God, like he always works in these ways, he used that crazy time in his life and brought him to the Lord. So through the slave trade, he became a Christian. And then through that, he basically kind of eventually jumped into some sort of ministry and influencing politics in Great Britain and so forth. Why did you decide to pick Olaudah Equiano to write a biography on?
Yeah, great question. So, the way this all started was I've been preaching biographies at my church for a few years. So I preached a reformer around Reformation Day, and then we started preaching, a reformed believer of color every February. So I preached Olaudah Equiano last year. I read his biography like 4 years ago, and when I read it, I just knew that it's something that I wanted to teach my children. My children would read this, but I also wanted the church at large to be exposed to what the Lord did through him. And I specifically, my main burden in Equiano is, sort of an apologetic in a way, to highlight the fact that these early abolitionists were reformed. They were Calvinistic, right? And they were capitalists, free market capitalists. And so that was very intriguing to me And so I wanted to put him on display. Besides that, he's just a really interesting dude, and really impressed by him. So that's how we decided to do that.
So how does this happen? A guy a slave in the slave trade becomes a Christian and then becomes a Calvinist. I mean, Jeff Durbin's not even Presbyterian, and he's here in America. No, basically, to get at my question, how does someone become, be in the slave trade, not have any books, not have any good biblical teaching, and yet still end up with this rich theology?
Certainly. So, he was converted through the ministry of Calvinistic Methodists. So he was exposed to Calvinism, in his conversion. Most deeply, it was the thing that explained his life. It was the thing that explained the tragedies he went through, was the sovereignty of God. And he gravitated towards it because it's the only thing that gave a real explanation for everything that was happening in his life, right? In his case, also, from where he grew up, the people were predestinarian. So he was born as a predestinarian, right? Grew up that way. And so in his case, it's very interesting, sort of a theological coming of age when he became a Reformed Calvinist, right?
And they were kind of, he basically grew up predestinarian, meaning that there was some sort of, mystic predestinarian that he just grew up in. It was disconnected from theology. Yeah.
Oh,
yep.
Okay. Because I was thinking that has something to do with, predestination.
Yeah. No, mystical, stars in the sky.
Thanks for explaining that to me, Gabe.
Sort of. It's more complicated than that. He believed that his people had some sort of connection with Israel, right? They practiced circumcision, they practiced washings, and I think the predestinarian tendencies probably he would link with some sort of distant connection with the children of Israel. That's a whole interesting topic in itself.
Yeah, some sort of
but in his case, there were so many forces. It was just inescapable for him that he was going to be someone who affirmed the sovereignty of God in all things.
Right.
It's Black History Month. If no one noticed.
February.
And one of the things that I think, you have a ministry out there that I think is involved in reaching Black culture. You do a lot of ministry to the Black Israel Hebrewites. Did I say it right? Israelites.
Hebrewites. Also.
I like that, actually.
I like that. That's
the
good.
Hebrewites, yeah. That's a new thing. One of the things that they always complain about is that, or actually not just them, but Islam too, a lot of Nation of Islam people that are out there is that, why would you embrace a religion that enslaved you? And somebody, we are looking on this side of it who haven't been enslaved. How much more with somebody who actually was enslaved by someone, has been lied to so many times about, how he's going to get his freedom, treated horribly. Saved up his money to try and purchase freedom, only to almost lose that. What is it that brings him to the point where he's like, no, this is a true God, even though my captors are not honoring it the way they should?
Yeah, definitely. It's just one of those wonders of the gospel that just proves it all the more that so many slaves were able to see through the false profession of their wicked masters, and they were able to see deeper into Christianity than their masters. Right?
Ouch!
Yeah. So,
you want to say that more graciously?
No, it needs to be said.
That was great. That was great.
Awesome.
Yeah. Go ahead, preach,
so,
Pastor.
That's just the power. That's the power of the gospel in and of itself. Now, if Christianity is true, then it's and if the devil is real and all these things, then naturally you know that he would war against it and use many false professions to blaspheme the name of Christ among the nations. It's not surprising that they're professing Christians that did such wicked things. If Christianity is real, if the devil is real, right? So it's not surprising. But the thing of it is that it was such a plain, when you square the way the slave traders who professed to be Christians acted with Christianity itself, the biblical sources, there's absolutely no lineup, right? They were clearly not Christian, right? So the ironic thing for someone like a Hebrew Israelite or, Nation of Islam or whatever, just someone who is Muslim, is that, these early abolitionists, what they believed was that those who were kidnapping West Africans and selling them into the hands of white men were Muslims.
Yeah.
So these early abolitionists believed that Islam was running the slave trade in West Africa, right? They saw Islam as something that was unable to jump the hurdle of slavery, while they looked at biblical New Testament Christianity as the only force that could truly overpower this evil, right? So for them, it was just natural.
This also goes back to his view of the sovereignty of God, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if he becomes a Christian through Christians who are professing in name but not in their actions, and he comes to believe in this sovereign God who's over everything, who is loving, who's forgiving, who deals with evil in the world, then that's also part of the reason why he can come to Christ through people who confess to be Christians but aren't Christians, because he sees the true God through it all.
Yeah. Luke, too, before you go, we're about to wrap up, and I want to just get this question out. One of the things that, we had Vodi Bakum on, you posed a question, and I actually want to pose that question to you. I didn't get a chance to ask him, I'm sorry, but I asked on Facebook, hey, what's some questions you might have for Vodi? And you asked, and I want you to answer this, why is it that Christianity comes off as the white man's religion, but Islam comes off as the black man's religion?
Great question. So
you asked it. You asked it.
That is a good question.
I asked it. So I wanted the answer from Big B Man. But anyways, something happened, right, in the 20th century, in the Black Power movement, that favored Islam, right? The Nation of Islam, even into the 5% Nation. There's something happened there that's like, if you want to stick it to whitey, then you become Muslim, right? When all of that is simply just ignorance of the history of the whole thing. We could get into Muhammad himself, who was a white dude who had black slaves. We could get into just the history of Islam itself, which is steeped in slavery and that kind of hierarchy. And so, to me, the only way I can explain it is it is simply schemes of the evil one, right, to cloud the name of Christ, to try to work really hard so that people can't see the light of the gospel. We know he's doing that all the time. And so to me, in writing this biography, I'm working on my third one now, which is Lemuel Haynes, the Black Puritan, right? So we're even going to get deeper into the Islam question versus Christianity question, right? In these early black abolitionists. So to me, it's just an ignorance of history, right? There's things about Islam that are attractive to the flesh, right?
Right.
And Christianity, of course, is just repulsive to the flesh. It looks weak, right? You turn the other cheek versus Muhammad the Conqueror. So there's just aspects, I think, that play into it. It's a broad question. That's my stab at it, but in either case, that's the reality, I think, that it's seen that way. And so part of what we're trying to do is expose that.
I want to take a stab at this before we let Luke go. I think part of the other problem is there's a really tremendous father hunger issue in the black community. And power is more attractive than sacrifice. And you have the power of the Islam God and the sacrifice of God our Father. And I think that's a big part of what's playing.
I think Luke likes that whole lot. Hey, Luke, tell us where we can get your book at.
Yep, so you can get all my books at wrathandgrace.com. We'll be pumping them out, Lord willing, one every few months for the foreseeable future.
I'm looking forward to it, man. We look forward to having you on to talk about it a little more. When we come back, why is Apologia in the Cross Politics studio? We're going to find out.
I have no idea.
Confusing.
Still trying to figure that out.
That's what my schedule said.
More Cross Politics when we come back.